Good evening, and welcome to the October 24th meeting of the Planning Policy Commission. This evening, we're going to have two public hearings, the first of which is a discussion on changing the EDU, whatever it is, a UVDC, and incorporating into the Planning Department and the Development Commission. And then we're going to have a public forum on 14 proposed amendments, updates to the comp plan to rezone 14 different parcels, one of which is, I'm sure you're concerned with, is the Providence Point property next to Providence Point. But before we start that, we need to clean up a little bit and approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was quite eventful.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for Planning and Policy Commission from September 26th.
I second that.
No, October 10th.
Oh, sorry, October 10th, my apologies.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we're going to start the meeting quickly with Lucy Sloman, who is the lead land development manager, and she's going to talk about UVDC.
And I just want to remind the audience that if anyone is interested in speaking on this matter, there's a separate sign-up sheet up front from the one for the second public hearing. So as Chairperson Probola mentioned, I'm Lucy Sloman, Land Development Manager for the Development Services Department. Tonight I am speaking about reassigning the duties of the Urban Village Development Commission to the Development Commission and the Planning Policy Commission. That's a mouthful. So currently we have two processes, or for more than 20 years, we had two processes. One was for the urban villages, we had an Urban Village Development Commission, UVDC, which did both development permit review and standards and policy review, whereas in the rest of the city, we had two separate commissions, the Development Commission, who did permit reviews, and the Planning Policy Commission, yourselves, who reviewed standards and policies. So let me give you a little bit of history. In 1996, when the Issaquah Highlands Development Agreement was adopted, a new commission was created to serve the needs of that development agreement, that urban village, and as I mentioned, it did both permit review and policy review. As other urban villages were created through the adoption of development agreements, their reviews were also assigned to the Urban Village Development Commission until 2013. And after 2013, any new development agreements that created urban villages were assigned just to a commission. It was not specific which commission they were assigned to. Last year, we terminated the Issaquah Highlands and the Talus development agreements. And so that leaves only the Rowley development agreement that specifically refers to the Urban Village Development Commission. Additionally, when we terminated those development agreements, we put replacement regulations in place to serve those two areas of the city. And those replacement regulations specified that development permits that would now go to the Development Commission following the termination of those agreements. So, kind of where are we right now? In the 7 years since the Rowley Development Agreement was adopted, they've had 0 permits that met the threshold to come to a commission. So it's not that they haven't had permits, they just aren't large enough to require they go to the Development Commission. And you can see with some of the other development agreements, that's very similar. The one exception is the WashDOT TDR development agreement, where Bellevue College might be located someday. There were 2 plats, so the subdivision of land that took place and went to the Urban Village Development Commission. However, those are complete. There's nothing left to do, and the development agreement development agreement's applicability has been terminated for those areas. For the land that's left where Bellevue College might potentially go, they have an active site development permit, so they are able to build that out as long as that development agreement is placed. So it's a relatively low workload that we're looking at this time. I also just wanted to point out to you that at your place, you can see the letter that IHIFC or Shelter submitted to the city today. I emailed that to you, but in case you hadn't seen the email, I wanted to provide the letter. Next steps, after our conversation today, we may be going to council on the 4th, but that depends on the nature of our conversation. Any questions?
I'm going to open up the public hearing.
Okay.
So unless you have any other comments, I'm going to open up the public hearing in regard to the UVDC at 6:35. And I see one person signed up to make a comment. If she would, Christy, if you would come to the microphone and tell us who you are.
Good evening, Chair Provola and Commission members. I'm Christy Triple with Raleigh Properties at 1595 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, Suite 1 here in Issaquah. And I am here this evening to speak to this topic. So understanding the UVDC will no longer have the workload necessary with the two major development agreement success in creating the Issaquah Highlands and Tallis communities, I'm here on Raleigh Properties' behalf to support the administration's recommendation. We are in agreement that UVDC's duties be reassigned to the Development and Planning Policy Commissions to continue their important work moving forward. We recognize and respect the necessary transition and understand that our pace of redevelopment and needs are not sufficient to retain the UVDC alone. I did want to take a moment and share, we have appreciated up close and from afar UVDC's knowledge of urban design and their thorough, well-informed decisions necessary to community building, new development, and related projects over its many years of service. We will look forward to continuing that same spirit and cultivation, working with the Development and Planning Policy Commissions, as it truly does take a village to create and connect community. Thank you.
Would anybody like to speak to this topic? Would anybody like to speak to this topic? Whatever, anybody like, I have to do it 3 times. Would anybody like to come to the microphone and speak to this topic? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:37. And ask the commission if they would like to vote on this.
A couple questions. Yeah, I think we have a few questions.
Okay, questions?
You want to go first, Robin? So one of the questions I have is how, seeing this email today, how is the city basically addressing the concerns in this email? It seems like there might be, it seems according to this letter that there might be a few things that they feel weren't checked off properly in order for us to move ahead to absorb this commission. Just want to make sure we cross all our T's and dot all our I's. So just a little concerned, like as moving forward, I don't want to do anything that would put the city in peril, and I don't want to overstep our bounds and take over UVDC's jurisdiction, something that might retroactively have to go back, even though it seems that this commission's been dispersed and it's no longer functioning as a body anyway.
Well, staff doesn't agree with the positions that have been provided in the letter. We disagree that procedures are vested to, once the development agreement is terminated, we disagree that the procedures are vested. And we also believe that we are not eliminating the functions of the UVDC, we're reassigning the duties.
Yep.
So we have a different perspective than the letter writer.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yes, go.
question? Along the same veins, what are the practical implications, given the concerns, whether you agree with them or not, expressed in this letter? It seems there's been delays for whatever reason. What are the practical implications accruing from a transfer? Would this further slow down the process that is the concerns about which are expressed in this letter? So if we do this, what are the practical implications, aside from legal implications? Can the process still move forward for IHIF in accordance with their desires? Or are we adding further to their delays?
So their land use permits were before the Development Commission for quite a while. The commission made a decision, and so that body of work in front of the commission has been completed. They have a preliminary plat in front of staff, and the decision maker on that is the hearing examiner. So if there was another permit that needed to go to a commission, the Development Commission is still available to carry out those duties. They would serve the function that the Urban Village Development Commission has done by reassigning those duties.
So in short, then, if we were to approve this, then there would be no practical issues facing the developer as a result solely and only of that transfer. Whatever was gone in the past has happened, and here we are now and going forward. Is that right?
We believe that there is a commission to meet the requirements that might come from their land use permits.
Thank you.
Anything else? So would you like to vote on this? I need a
I'm ready.
motion to accept the amendment to reassign the UVDC.
I'd like to move to accept the amendment to transfer the responsibilities of the UVDC to the PPC and the DC.
Have a second?
I second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
The motion carries. So with that, I'm going to call up the tag team. Okay.
And we're aware of that. Our technical guy was just down here checking. He's trying to fix that right now. But yes, in the meantime, we will try and speak louder.
I can't get any closer. Just to give you a background, there are 14 different sections that we are eventually going to look at tonight to rezone them. Okay.
Well, that's part of the comprehensive plan amendments, but just a portion of the amendments are the redesignation
But
and
there are
rezones.
14 parcels.
8.
I think there's only 8.
8 parcels? Okay.
Yes, 8 parcels. The 5 or 6 parcels off of Newport Way were pulled.
Were removed,
Were removed right after.
Right in the beginning.
letter
So
went
I
out.
just included all of them.
right.
Okay, so 8.
Okay. So, welcome back to the continued public hearing. Can you hear me okay? Am I close enough? A little louder? Okay. I'll just belt it out there. American Idol right here. First, I wanted to let you know that something different has happened since the 10th, since that great Thursday night we were in the Pickering Room, and an appeal has come in just the other day of the final SEPA determination for the comprehensive plan amendments that includes the rezone and redesignation. And so what I wanted you all to know is that council is the decision maker on the appeal. And according to our code, they have 90 days to make a decision on that, and an appeal date has not yet been set for that. But we will keep, if you all are on our notice list, we will let you know when that happens, but it has not been set yet that I know of. The PPC public hearing does continue tonight, and if you are comfortable giving a recommendation tonight, that's fine too. A reminder to you all that your role is either you can recommend approval of the amendments, you can recommend denial of the amendments, or you can recommend approval with conditions. And those conditions can range from, as you remember with the impact fees a few years ago, you recommended that council update the impact fees, and you recommended that they take a look at level of service. You can recommend things that you would like them to look at, that you've heard from the public or that you've heard from staff that you would like council to pay close attention to during their review of the projects. So those are the kind of conditions that you can add to your recommendation, and I know most of you know that you can do that, but there's some new ones that may not know that they can add pieces and parts of to the recommendation if you choose to. And if you have questions on that later on, we can talk about that more as we get farther along tonight. So the first thing I wanted to mention is there seemed to be a lot of confusion about the process to do redesignations and rezones and the process to actually do a construction permit for a building. And we call them two steps. They also have two different kinds of environmental review. They have two different groups that recommend to the council. And so they're very different processes for the two steps. The first step is what we're doing now through the Planning Policy Commission. It's legislative, meaning that it's a policy question. It's more general than a construction permit that actually has site plans and buffers and wetlands and slopes and those kinds of details that you don't get into because you're the policy group. The SEPA determination for your types of projects for policy level are very general because there isn't any earth moving when you all make a recommendation. That specificity for environmental review comes at the second step when there's actually a permit that has been applied for that does have a site plan and buffers and wetlands and slopes and those kinds of things. At that time, that environmental review goes into depth on traffic and slopes and all those kinds of physical pieces that a site permit would need to have evaluated before that could move forward. The public outreach is similar in both, in that in your process, all the folks that lived within 300 feet of the proposed redesignation and rezones received letters in the mail, and that also happens with the construction permit. The other piece that happens with the construction permit, before the application comes in, there's a community conference in front of the Development Commission, and that's when the neighbors that live, the property owners within 300 feet of the property, are all invited to hear the proposal, the preliminary proposal with the Development Commission there, and they talk about it before there's an official application that comes in. For this project that you're all here for, that is not happened yet because we haven't gotten an actual preliminary application. We're still talking about the site plans that the school has submitted, and they're not official yet. They're not in that way in the condition that we're ready to have a community conference to be scheduled yet. But it will be scheduled if this is moving forward, because that's part of the process for the second piece. The council is the decision maker on both processes, on the legislative process where you all recommend, and on the construction permit that the Development Commission would make their recommendation. So the council decides on both of those. The SEPA of non-project actions, which is what has been done for this proposal, it identifies cumulative impacts. It talks about, it evaluates the comments that were received during the comment period. It talks about possible alternatives for the sites. It identifies project mitigation measures that should occur or could occur when the actual construction permit is evaluated. And it also identifies an appeal deadline. So those are the big items that a SEPA, an environmental review at this level, at the legislative level, has to contain. Because there were some questions on what does environmental review at this level need to include. The other piece that to me is fascinating is for community facility standards, which all of the parcels in your packet are to be redesignated or rezoned to one of the community facilities zones. And by the very definition of community facility, it has to be owned by a public entity, and the use has to be a public use. And they're listed in the code, some of those that can happen in those zones. They're just flat out listed that those are considered okay in that zone. And so when folks come to us and say, you know, I'm King County and I would like to put a courthouse on the corner of here and here. If courthouse is listed already, that's one of the criteria that staff looks at when we see if we're going to recommend that you recommend approval or not. And let's say King County came in and they wanted a needle exchange site. That is not listed in the community facilities purpose or intent or the listing, and so we would look at that very carefully. They would probably say it was a public use, and so that would be something that we would look at very hard, very closely, to see if it met our other criteria of being a community facility. But for the most part, the list that's already listed in the code helps us make our decision whether we're going to recommend to you all approval or not of the community facility redesignation and rezone. I've also put the chart in here on the slideshow of the actual code provision, the standards that a public building or a public school would need to meet in the capital facility, in the community facility zone. Just to let you know that once it's rezoned, or if it's rezoned, they have specific standards that they have to meet, even though they're a public entity for a public purpose. And some of you were on the commission when we worked on those in the last couple of years. Do you want to do the transportation element, or do you want me to keep going?
You can go ahead.
We can see how far I can get
okay.
before the lights go off. So I'm moving to another comprehensive plan amendment, okay? And I'll go fast because I know the other ones might not be as fascinating to the group as they are to us. The transportation element is updated every year to add the new transportation improvement program, the 6-year improvement program. We also updated the concurrency numbers because we updated concurrency in 2018. We updated the roadway and non-motorized project maps, and the non-motorized map that connects to the urban villages. Those are the changes that you reviewed. I think 2 different meetings you reviewed those in the transportation element. Here are the proposed community facility rezone and redesignation. The first 3 are those that are adjacent to Providence Point. Their existing land use is low density. The proposed land use is community facilities. The existing zoning is single-family small lot, and the proposal for zoning is community facilities/facilities, because the school district would like to put 2 schools there. The next one is owned by King County. It's at the top of what some of us know as the Bergsma property. King County owns it, and they would like it to be community facilities open space. It is within the city limits, but they have asked us to zone it community facilities open space so it can connect with Cougar Mountain Wildland Park that surrounds it. This one, okay, didn't recognize the shape. This one is in Tallis and also owned by the Issaquah School District, and they would like to put a school there as well. These are mitigation sites for Southeast 63 2nd Street. They're existing mixed use, but there's actually a road and a roundabout and some wetlands in there. And so we want to get it pulled out of the existing zone so it can be community facilities. Those are those 2 parcels. And the little one at the corner, this is, the city would like to connect it as part of the future Front Street Park assemblage. So this is owned by the city, and we would like it to be community facilities recreation. Moving on to another amendment, this is the land use element. These are the job targets and the housing target updates that we went over with you, I think, in July. It's clear, I think, in your packet, because it certainly looks blurry to me up there. But we continue to make advances towards our growth targets. We're doing better on our, I shouldn't say better, there's no better or worse. We're getting closer to meeting our housing target than we are to our jobs target, but our jobs target is we're still doing very well on that. The only policy updates we made to the land use element is because of the recent update to the Shoreline Master Program that you worked on, there's a couple of changes in the land use element regarding that. And we also did some policy changes. Actually, we enhanced the policy for the Mountains to Sound Greenway. I believe you looked at those in July. For utilities, the only thing we corrected, we updated our recent adoption of King County's comprehensive solid waste plan and all the recycling that we're doing. So that was good news that we had good numbers for that. And then the other one that you all worked with, actually Ron worked on the subcommittee to update the goals and policies for the Park Strategic Plan that also will go into our Parks element. And that was something you had asked for last year. In fact, that was a recommendation you all made to council, is that you be able to work with the Park Board and the Park and Planning Departments to update the goals and policies, and council agreed with you and put that in the work plan for this year. So that's another example of a recommendation condition that you all can add. The capital facilities element, we updated it with the fire, police, schools, transportation, all the mitigation and impact fees are included, as well as some general language about park impact fees, because we're not quite done drafting those yet. So we tried to make the element be able to be flexible for when the park impact fees are done, that they would just fit very nicely within the framework that we left for them. We also modified the level of service language to try to refer only to those fees that are actually impact fees, because level of service tends to be a state-defined term related to impact fees and not to mitigation fees. So we tried to clean that up as well. And we updated the map to show that the school district offices have moved. So that's the only change on the map. There were several items that we did not address on the docket this year, and I have to state these because it's a state requirement that everyone know the ones that we didn't end up finishing or doing this year. We haven't finished the mobility master plan yet, so we weren't able to include whatever provisions come out of that into this year's update, but maybe we'll be able to do that next year. The tree canopy policies and targets are not completely, we've done the study, but we haven't actually looked at what does that mean to our goals and policies related to tree canopy, so we're going to hold that over till next year to give you all a chance to really talk about those and see where you want to go on the tree canopy goals and policies. We didn't amend the sub-area map because we're not quite sure where those lines will fall. We'd like to do some more neighborhood work before we do that. The property adjacent to Swedish Hospital and the property off of Northwest Sammamish and the Bergsma properties were pulled off the community facility rezone redesignation list because we weren't ready to move forward with those yet. Anything in the central plan update related to Title 18, we didn't touch that yet because Title 18, which is the land use code, isn't moved ahead enough yet for us to know what the changes will be, but that might be either in the next year or the year after that, depending on how Title 18 goes. But you'll be very involved in the Title 18 update, so don't worry about that. That's coming soon. We weren't able to merge capital facilities and utility element yet. We're hopeful someday. And the stormwater management plan isn't done yet, so we weren't able to put that into the utility and public service element. Also, we didn't update the treasures because that just seemed overwhelming for us. And there's some other pieces like the branding, Issaquah branding moving forward, and the wayfinding piece is moving forward. And so we wanted to see where those went before we started looking at the treasures again. I think that's it. The next steps, most of which are up to you, the public hearing is continued tonight, and if you feel that you can make a recommendation of whatever type that you feel passionate about. You can continue it. If you don't feel that you know enough or feel strongly enough, you can continue it to another date, night, site, location certain. That's up to how you feel at the end of the night. And then if you do make a recommendation tonight, it would be a study, there would be a study session at council on November 12th, and then December 2nd would be the regular meeting where council could take action. With the appeal in there, I don't know what that does to the schedule because a date hasn't been set to to figure out the appeal yet, but that's the next steps that I knew of before the appeal came in. So that's as far as I can tell you. Are there questions for me before you open the?
I have one question. If you go back to the 60-second.
The mitigation?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been used as mitigation for the Costco,
Well,
was it not?
part of it was. So parcel number 12, most of that is a mitigation site that was used for Costco, yes. And then the bottom right-hand corner and then all of 13 were actually used for the road.
So if it's used for mitigation, you're planning to rezone it into capital facilities?
Right. Community facilities because of the road.
Okay, so that means what exactly? You can build on it?
I'm going to No, there's already a road there. So we won't be building any more on it. And there's an agreement or something in place that there's an agreement that says that the rest of it will be a mitigation site for the road.
Okay, so why do you have to rezone it?
Because right now it's mixed use. It's not zoned community facilities.
Okay, so this is to continue with the mitigation, basically?
Yes, and to recognize it as a public use.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Robin?
No question. Can we consider, in deliberating tonight, are we to consider all the sites, the 8 sites, as one in terms of we approve them as a total, or can we strip out a site that we might not want to push forward?
You can do however you want.
Okay. And secondly, would you go back over the letter you just got? I didn't quite catch the issue with the SEPA, the concern, the letter you just got, you mentioned initially.
The appeal?
Appeal, excuse me.
We received an appeal. The appeal was appealing the final SEPA determination. And the majority of the letter looked exactly like the letter that you all received October 9th, I want to say, from the attorneys representing the umbrella, the Providence Point Umbrella Group.
Thank you.
And then I have a question too. On building on what my fellow commissioner said, is it also possible, we can also approve amendments, but we don't have to approve them as an entire package? So we can approve like the transportation element and, yeah.
Correct. You can, whatever works for you all is great.
Originally, we were going to take out the 3 and then discuss that one and then go on to the other one. So now we just put them all together. So we can discuss each one, any one you want, and I know that there'll be a lot of discussion on the Province Point one. So are there any other questions for Trish before we open up the public hearing?
I have a question. On the issue of the non-project SEPA review, as I read the document that the city had submitted, it came across as if it were answering whether the fact of rezoning, that just fact of rezoning resulted in any impact, as opposed to the subsequent effects of what would happen with any potential development. That was not part of the scope of the non-project review, is that correct?
Correct.
And one of the public comment letters raised the issue that the Department of Ecology rules for this suggest that if there are obviously foreseeable impacts, that they should be included in that non-project SEPA. Is that correct or not correct under the city's understanding?
I can't speak to Department of Ecology. I can say that the way that the city has always done non-project of this nature, where it's a community facility redesignation and rezone, is it's in 2 steps. The first step is the applicant, whether it's us, King County, the school district, has to meet the criteria of, is it a public entity using the property for a public purpose? And if those 2 are okay, then they can proceed to the next step of what is the building and the site plan going to look like. And if they can't pass that part, then the construction doesn't go forward because they have to meet both. But in the non-project part, it's only that criteria of, is it a public entity that owns it, and are they using the property for will they be using it for a public purpose?
Those are the components that we look at in deciding whether to approve this, but are those the only factors that get evaluated from the perspective of approving the SEPA report?
That's my understanding of how it occurs.
Right, thank you.
Anything else before we open it up?
No.
Okay. I will give you the list.
So before, okay. So before I open the public hearing, I do want to make a couple comments, and I assume that these guidelines were going to be up on the screen. But just to continue on quickly, if you are going to address the commission this evening, you will have 3 minutes to present your case. For those who signed up, which I have only 1 sheet, you will be first, and if there's additional people that would like to speak after the people who have signed up, you're certainly welcome to come up and add your comments. If you are speaking for a group, maybe you can designate when you come up what group you are speaking for. If you hear testimony or comments you support, please raise your hand. We like to keep a little bit of order, and we want to know how many people kind of agree with what is being said, so raise your hand. If it's possible, limit your comments to information and perspectives that have not yet been addressed, so that all viewpoints have the opportunity to be heard by the commission. Does that make sense to you all? With that, I'd like to open continue the public hearing that was delayed from October the 10th and September the 29th, something like that, at 7:10. And The first person who is on the list is Tom. I have asked that the school district have the opportunity to have 3 minutes to discuss their plans.
Perfect. Good evening, Tom Mullins with the Issaquah School District. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Tom Mullins. I am the Director of Capital Projects for the Issaquah School District. Our district superintendent and board members cannot be here this evening as they have a board meeting occurring at the same time. However, this item is of considerable importance to the district. We can't emphasize enough our community's need for new school capacity. Recent and ongoing growth has strained our existing schools. Without new schools in place by 2025, we will be over capacity at the elementary level by nearly 1,300 students, at the middle school by about 600 students, and at the high school level by over 1,000. Land in the urban area is scarce. We have searched for years to identify developable school sites near our student population and meeting the county and city's regulatory framework. This search in just the last 6 years, and conducted with the aid of a professional broker, included review of nearly 70 parcels totaling over 700 acres across the urban area of our district. We've considered non-traditional sites, complicated property assemblages, joint use sites, and condemnation. However, even with these considerations, we've struggled to locate suitable land. Often, even if the land is in the right location or even a fair location, critical areas, topographic issues, and access restrictions make it unusable for a school site. The 3 parcels, about 40 acres, fit our critical student service needs for future high school and elementary school capacity. The mostly flat site will provide flexibility for future design, is located within our district's growth areas and near our student populations, sits between Skyline High School and Issaquah High School, and will allow us to alleviate current capacity issues and avoid imminent capacity strain at both of these schools, and provides us with a high school and elementary school site in an area where both schools are needed and we have otherwise not been successful in locating alternative property for either school. In addition, the joint siting opportunity allows us to use taxpayer dollars carefully and efficiently, given that the urban land costs are nearly $1 million per acre and construction and design costs continue to rise. We understand that the neighborhood, like any neighborhood would, has concerns about the new school buildings and wants to be a part of the process. We appreciate and welcome this involvement. As you know, the proposed redesignation and rezone is the first step in our process, and have only at this point prepared conceptual designs for further review. The district appreciates
That's 3
your...
minutes. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you very much. Nope, not a problem.
When you have a minute left, the light starts blinking green, and then when you have 30 seconds yet, it starts just yellow, like caution, just so when you're up there, you can kind of pace yourself.
Denise?
From the district?
Denise?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Speak up. It's very distant in the back of the room. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Denise Stiffarm with Pacifica Law Group, 1191 2nd Avenue. You'll have to speak loud. And I will speak as loud as I can, 1191 2nd Avenue, and I'm also legal counsel for the Issaquah School District. Just wanted to reemphasize what staff have provided for you this evening, that this is a very narrow focus before you this evening, and that is whether or not to redesignate and rezone publicly owned property as community facilities. Again, there's not a project before you. There's not a SEPA decision before you. This is very narrow to that underlying land use designation. It is absolutely true that the district does need this site to provide for a new high school and a new elementary school, and that they have searched very long and very hard to find appropriate sites for this purpose, along with the other schools that were approved by the voters in the 2016 bond. It is difficult in King County to locate land for schools. In 2012, King County restricted the development of schools outside of the urban growth boundary. The Issaquah School District crosses the urban growth boundary, and actually most of its land base is over on the rural side, but they are restricted to looking within the urban area for schools. This site happens to be in an area where a lot of the growth is occurring, because as we know, residential growth, commercial growth, it continues to happen. The City of Issaquah's comprehensive plan projects that by 2025, population will grow by about 17%, and that is reflected in the district's own student population. So this site is an area that reflects where the students are living and where a new school is needed, but also reflects that it's very difficult to locate land for schools. The other thing that's important to remember is that the district has followed the regulatory framework set up by the city for purposes of siting schools. Some of you who sat here in 2017 know that it was a very long and arduous process to consider, hear public testimony, and deliberate on the compact school regulations. And those procedures were put in place to recognize the scarcity of land within the urban area and the need for new schools. And so the district's siting considerations have followed that and have done that in a very thoughtful way to implement what the city has in place for those purposes. The work is just at the very beginning again. The community will have opportunities for involvement and should have opportunities for involvement when this becomes a project proposal that can be meaningfully reviewed under the State Environmental Policy Act and meaningfully reviewed through the permit processing with the city. So with that, we appreciate your consideration. Again, wanted to reemphasize that the superintendent and the board members very much would like to be here, but they are meeting across town right now.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Leo Graham?
Can I pass something out briefly? Just hand it to the chair.
What? What's going on?
My name is Leo Graham. I'm a resident at Providence Point.
Microphone.
I'm Leo Graham. I'm a resident at Providence Point. I'm here tonight to speak to the issue of the new school. We would like to please request that the Commission consider not rezoning this property, leave it low-density, single-family with the potential for an elementary school because of the intense use that this new two-school development will have again next to Providence Point. So, with that said, we are going to have several residents of Providence Point come up and speak to different issues that affect Providence Point. They'll try to stay to the 3-minute limitation and not be redundant to try to get all of our points across. Then there'll be 2 experts and our attorney speak to the more specific issues and technical issues. I'm chair of the Government Affairs Committee at Providence Point. That doesn't mean much, but that's my title. The history of Providence Point is that it's a unique facility. It's been there 35 years. It has about 1,400 people in it. It's condos for seniors 55 and over. The units that abut this property are 2- and 3-story. They look out at a treed park-like setting at this point. And it is a senior community. It's not expensive. It's an affordable community for those seniors. The condo units are not fancy. They're located in an area with very special amenities, park-like trails, common facilities, and the like. Almost all of the condos are owned by our owner-occupied. The cost of the units is well below the average Issaquah residence. Providence Point was built as a part of a master plan for retirement living. In 1978, the Sisters of Providence sold the land to the Lutheran Bible Institute with the provision that a senior retirement community be developed. The results are the Providence Point 160-acre development, Bellwood, an assisted living facility, Marionwood, a skilled nursing facility, and Spiritwood, a memory care facility, all that border this property. We surround the parcels that you are looking to rezone. There are no kids in the area. And it is bordered on the other side by 43 and 228, which, as I'm sure you know, are highly congested roads that don't support this kind of activity. The rezoning, if approved, will allow the district to build on the entire property with the removal of all the trees, grading of the site, and construction of schools and facilities which will cover the site.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll all talk faster next time.
Daphne?
Hello, I'm Daphne again from Providence Point, and I thought maybe I would give you a thumbnail sketch of what Providence Point is like. And I don't know how many of you have ever driven through there, but if you drive through Providence Point, you're not going to see massive parking lots, nor are you going to see immense buildings. You're going to see nice open spaces and lots of trees and a lovely, lovely place to retire. It's an over 55 community. It surrounds that rezone on 3 sides, and I'll tell you, when you go and drive it, you will see how close it feels. There are over 3,100 lineal feet of boundary between Providence Point and this rezone. And in Providence Point, 160 acres, there are walking paths, there are large retention ponds because we're careful about keeping the water out of the lake. In addition to that, there is a pea patch, there are landscaped berms, there is even a stream that we care about a lot. All these lovely residents pay a lot of money to professionally keep these areas landscaped and mowed, and they keep them, and they like the fact that it's green. In addition to the 1,400 residents, there are who live in the units. There are 4 community buildings which they stay in, they have activities in, and I don't know if you knew that, but 85% of the people there are retired, and they are then impacted 24 hours a day by this school. And it is important that you consider the impact of this intrusive and inappropriate development that you can allow. I looked at your chart, 7 feet. Do you know what 7 feet is? They can put a basketball court 7 feet from the property line. Again, I hope you folks understand how important it is to all these wonderful people who, instead of staying home watching Jeopardy, are here talking to you.
Thank you. Faye? Oh, okay, Paul. Paul Claypole?
Good evening. My name is Paul Claypool. I'm a resident of Providence Point, to nobody's surprise. I'm speaking to oppose the proposed rezoning of the 3 Providence Heights parcels by highlighting some negative impacts on the residents, traffic patterns, and safety of the surrounding community, and to express my concern about the lack of communication and partnering between the Issaquah School District and the Providence Point community. As a 3-year Providence Point resident and owner of the first-floor apartment in the Highlander, 10 units of which look directly on the proposed property, I have a direct and unobstructed view of the Providence Heights property. I should probably point out that my window is probably at the most 30 feet from the property line, so a lot of this stuff will bear directly. There are 7 residential buildings in Highland Village that directly border the northwest portion, parcels 1 and 2 of the Providence Heights property, and all of them will have direct negative impacts from the lack of any buffer if the region rezoning is approved and anything like the current building plan is followed. The remainder of Highland Village, totaling 143 units, will be negatively impacted by noise, exhaust from school buses, increased automated automobile traffic, stray foul balls from the baseball field, and possible trespassing by students. Washington Village and Hilltop Village will have their own negative impacts from this relationship to parcels 2 and 3. The current conceptual maps and tree removal plans show a total lack of any buffer zone between the planned campus and the Highland Village, which is unlike the existing ISD schools in the area. Pine Lake Middle School, Sunny Hills Elementary School, and Skyline High School all have substantial forested buffer zones between the campuses and residential areas. Another factor in my opposition to the rezoning proposal is the lack of interaction between the ISD and the Providence Point. The school superintendent did meet with the Government Affairs Committee of Providence Point on June 28, 2018, a year ago, and assured the committee that the ISD design team would be conferring with Providence Point in the form of an open meeting with Providence Point residents once the property was obtained by the ISD. This open meeting would be to explain construction plans and listen to the concern of residents. There has been no such meeting scheduled or offered, and the Government Affairs Committee has reached out numerous times to ISD to request a meeting. No positive response has been received. In closing, I urge the Commission to require that the school district include an analysis of any plan submitted before any rezoning is approved, and to require that the ISD make public an application to the city which would generate a staff report that would furnish vital information about the project to the surrounding community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I figured I would get a lot of those, yeah. Is Mary want to speak too? Okay. I wasn't sure how you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Faye Hellman, and I live at Providence Point in Washington Village, which is one of the ones that's most affected. And I've lived there for 17 years. I'm here tonight to talk about the adverse impact of schools on adjacent residential communities. The proposed change of zoning for parcels 1, 2, and 3 to allow Issaquah School District to build 2 new schools would negatively impact the Providence Point residential community in a number of ways. The biggest would be the loss of trees. I think you've seen the poster, and perhaps you have heard about or seen the drone video showing the dense woods that are now on the district property. If the new zoning were approved, there would only be a minimal setback from adjoining property. And the arborist plan, and pardon my low tech, shows most all trees on the border would be cut down. The loss of trees would create a very negative environmental and visual impact. Where I now see trees on the other side of the fence line, I would see a 3-story building. The loss of trees would create a very negative environmental and visual impact. I already said that. This is just one example of the many negative visual impacts residents would experience along the more than 3,100 linear feet of border with the district property. Other adverse effects are bus noise and fumes, made worse by lack of trees, school and activity lights and noise, sports area lights and noise, noise from large numbers of teens and young children in one place, and from outdoor school public address systems. From these, we would hear announcements and much more. Football fields need, as you know, huge, tall, glaring lights for games at night and for practices when it gets dark early. Football games mean cheering crowds, loudspeakers, marching bands, and loud music. All of these impacts would be a huge change from the unlighted quiet we now have. Construction of 2 schools and the amenities and parking lots would be a lengthy process and would subject the residents at Providence Point to noise and dust and disruption associated with that massive construction. I oppose the rezoning of parcels 1, 2, and 3 because it would have significant negative impacts on the environment and on our residential community. We choose to live at Providence Point because of the beauty and tranquility. We delight in our many trees and quiet, peaceful streets. The addition of 2 schools on the adjacent property would permanently impact the quality of life that we enjoy now. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. I said hands. Ron Imhoff?
Hello, my name is Ron Imhoff. My wife and I have lived at Providence Point in Issaquah for about 1.5 years. I would like to discuss several issues regarding the rezoning of parcels 1, 2, and 3 for the Issaquah School District, particularly access to the property and traffic impacts. I will start with a question: why select this site when it doesn't make sense? Just as you wouldn't allow a hotel to get a property rezoned for its use without all issues addressed to make sure that property was appropriate for the planned use, you shouldn't allow the Issaquah School District to get a property rezoned without all issues addressed. Regarding access to the property, that property only has one road, 228th Avenue Southeast, that abuts the property, so all traffic and students have to enter off of that road. Considering the amount of traffic generated and the amount of traffic that already uses 228th past that property, that will cause additional bottlenecks and congestion. The access road to the property is also up a hill, which will make entry and exit difficult and dangerous during winter weather. To compare access to the school property with other schools, we can look at the 2 closest schools to the property. Both Pine Lake Middle School and Sunny Hills Elementary School have bus entry and exit separate from auto entry and exit. Both of those schools are also adjacent to 2 main roads, with the buses exiting from a different road than the cars. If the planned school population of the proposed high school and elementary school is to be about 2,000 students plus teachers and staff, then that's 2 or 3 times the populations of those schools with less access. Both of those schools also are near residential areas where at least some of the students live. However, this property is surrounded by Providence Point, where there will not be any students living. Therefore, there will be few students that can walk or bike to school. Even if they wanted to, their parents probably wouldn't let them because 228th is a dangerous street to walk or bike on. If we want to encourage the Issaquah multimodal vision, then we would want a school property where many of the students will be able to walk or bike to attend. In fact, if we consider reduction of carbon a worthy goal for the students to champion, I doubt that they would want to go to a school where it is necessary to use fossil fuel to get there. 228th is also a major traffic corridor, and you have to go up 43rd if you're coming from the valley, which is a very steep hill, and it's not one we'd want our students to drive on every day to get to school. We often see people, the speed limit's 35, we often see people going 45, 50 or more. It seems that the drivers don't even care that they're violating the law. Any accident on that street can cause a gridlock ripple throughout Issaquah and Sammamish. In fact, just last week, that occurred. A dump truck accident on 43rd, backed up 43rd, East Lake Sammamish Parkway, Issaquah Pond Lake Road, and 228th.
Thank you.
Okay.
I want to wave back. I don't know. Irene Rice.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment on the proposed Issaquah School District project abutting Providence Point. My name is Irene Rice. My husband and I have been residents of Providence Point and Washington Village for the last 11 years. We are both registered voters. Tonight, I want to express my grave concerns about the proposed plan for the development of the former Providence Heights property, and specifically the inadequacy of the proposed buffer between the school property and Providence Point community. Washington Village is composed of five three-story buildings with 181 individual condominium units. All 5 buildings face the school property. The distance between the building's garage and the proposed elementary school building is 20 feet. That is 10 feet from the garage to the fence line, property line, and then another 10 feet beyond that fence to the school. To visualize that distance, it's less than the length of my living room. Most importantly, the arborist plan for the site shows that all the trees on the northwest side of the property will be removed. The most recent iteration of the plan shows retaining walls on the corner of the site where they plan to place an elementary school, meaning that the intent is to elevate this building. Instead of green space facing the front of the entrance of Olympia building in our village, you will see the back side of the school building and a concrete wall that Faye showed you. One of the primary reasons our owners purchased in the property is the park-like setting. Concrete walls and backsides of buildings are hardly park-like. It also appears that there is a plan to retain a few signature trees to give a nod to the Issaquah tree program. A reasonable buffer will retain green space for both schools and Providence Point. One of the commissioners pointed out at the September 26th hearing that if Parcel 3 was rezoned to common facilities open space, then the buffer could be preserved. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll consider the needs of Providence Point as you make this decision.
Thank you. Getting your exercise tonight, yeah. John Ashton?
Yep. Good evening. I'm John Bastian. My wife and I live in Providence Point for the last 8 years. I am currently serving as a director on the Umbrella Board. While other speakers have talked to you tonight about traffic, noises, and residential concerns, I will tell you about another area of concern which would be affected by the proposed school site. That will be the location in the Laughing Jacob Creek watershed and the negative effect it could have on drainage in that area. The watershed consists of 3,600 acres across the southern portion of Sammamish and the northern part of Issaquah. The creek flows through Forest Village, parallel to 43rd Street and into Lake Sammamish. The Laughing Jacob's basis plan has been set in motion with funding of $325,000 split between Sammamish and Issaquah. The plan is designed to assess the current health of the basin and identify priority projects to help reduce flooding and preserve natural habitat. The importance of preserving and enhancing Latham-Jacobs Creek cannot be overlooked. It is one of only 3 creeks that flow into Lake Sammamish and suitable for kokanee salmon spawning. This species of salmon, native to our lake, is in danger of extinction. Only 19 fish were counted in a spawning count taken in 2018. Plans for creek renovation are underway with interested parties from Trout Unlimited, Washington State Parks, and staff from Issaquah and Sammamish. The initial meeting on April 4th, 2019 resulted in a work plan to assess the health of the creek and drainage area and determine what can be done to make the creek hospitable for kokanee to spawn. About 600 feet of Latham-Jacobs Creek runs through Providence Point Forest Village. We take good care of the creek by providing about 250 feet of buffer on either side of the stream and maintaining a non-impactful walking trail. Without proper drainage, control in the basin, improving the condition of the creek spawning will become impossible. The creek needs to be widened in some areas, gravel lined in stream beds, and pools created. However, as the Issaquah School Board site plan shows, the 40-acre site will be transformed into a high percentage of impervious surfaces.
Thank you.
Which will hinder the drainage from that area.
Ross?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ross Tillman at 4618 44th Avenue South, Seattle. I'm a transportation planner speaking on behalf of Providence Point. First, let me acknowledge and thank you for the service you provide on this commission. I understand the effort that takes. I recently completed 5 years on the Seattle Design Commission, so thank you for what you're doing to make a better community. The rezone request before you has some profound implications, particularly for transportation, to which I'll speak. I provided written comments prior to the October 10 meeting. I hope you've had a chance to read that. I will summarize some of the key points here. Again, the rezoning request, I think, in terms of transportation, needs to be considered in terms of the context and the location of this site, because it faces systemic deficiencies in the transportation network that are beyond mitigation. So, one, the site is basically too isolated from its students and lacks too much pedestrian, bike, transit infrastructure to comply with comprehensive plan policies. Indeed, the comprehensive plan says that new compact schools should be located to offer safe pedestrian, bicycle, transit, and public access from the community to the facility. But this site has no sidewalks within 1,500 feet, over a quarter of a mile. It has no public transit within 4,000 feet, almost a mile away. The bike lane that exists on 228th is but the paved shoulder, unprotected, on a street with over 18,000 daily vehicle trips. Multimodal access from the adjacent community is simply non-existent, and it is not likely to exist in the future because, as has been amply described, the surrounding neighborhood is a retirement community. The area has too few arterial roads, and is too congested to take on a large traffic generator with over 4,000 daily trips. 3,000 of those would be from the high school as proposed, and 1,000 from the elementary school. Locating it on a single arterial simply concentrates traffic and creates congestion, unlike other high school campuses that usually take advantage of access from two arterials, spreading traffic. A workable second access for emergency purposes has yet to be credibly identified. The comprehensive plan never anticipated this type of use and makes no provision for the pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities it needs. From a practical transportation perspective, as well as from the comprehensive plan's goals, the site is not appropriate for large schools. And rezoning should avoid creating problems that can't be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Good evening. My name is Dave Weckner. I'm a land use consultant. My business address is 502 Northeast 6th Street in Coopville, Washington, 98239. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Providence Point Community Association. My review for the association focused on the comprehensive plan policies, the countywide planning policies, and your rezone criteria in the Issaquah Municipal Code. So that was the focus of my review. I also touched on some of the impacts that the citizens have discussed tonight, so I'm going to kind of go past that. They've already explained what the potential impact should be, and I wanted to answer Commissioner Carl's question real quick. You asked whether we can consider environmental impacts and land use designations at this point in the land use designation process, both as part of SEPA and your decision. Yes, you can. I've been the responsible SEPA official in 3 jurisdictions in Washington State, and that is fairly commonly done. To use another example, if this were rezoned for an airport, you should anticipate planes. So I've reviewed the application materials as posted on the city and school district websites, submitted a report to you. That report's dated October 8th with a response to those criteria, as I mentioned. And looking at the approval criteria in total, the project, I don't believe, satisfies them. It's not just a rezone either. We know what the impacts are going to be, as I stated. And the gist of the amendment criteria, all of those, the countywide planning policies, your own comp plan policies, and the rezone criteria can be boiled down to 3 words. Make it fit. Make it fit the site. The land use designation is that first step, and yes, as the staff mentioned, there are suitable steps that happen beyond that, where we sort of sharpen the pencil on what those impacts might be and how we mitigate them if they can be mitigated. But there are, in your comprehensive plan, there are land use element, there's 5 different policies on school siting, and even examples on how to satisfy those policies. The district hasn't addressed the city's comp plan policies or the countywide planning policies, which also address school siting, and the rezone criteria of your own code. And so that is really a step that needs to happen, I think, for the Planning Commission to make a finding that this rezone and comprehensive plan amendment should take place. The findings that were drafted for you simply state that the map change has to be consistent with the decision to approve. Well, that much is true, but there's no substance to the actual finding that it's met your plan criteria. So I'd recommend that you either deny the amendment or reduce the scale of the area available for development of the project by requiring substantive mitigation through the land use designation process to control impacts that are entirely predictable. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have about my report.
Thank you.
I'm missing Jeopardy too.
Rick?
Can I get you to put up that, the comments we were looking at before I start? I don't know quite how to get them. You don't know how to get them.
Whoops. Is that what you're looking for?
I'm looking for 128.
Page 128?
Yeah, I think we can get it.
Okay.
While we're waiting, most times people put their email address on here. Am I assuming that everybody that spoke tonight has signed up and is receiving all the information from the city through their email? Yes? If not, after the meeting, maybe you could add your email so that the city can keep you abreast.
Okay, I think I'm ready to go. I'm Richard Aramburu. I'm here tonight representing the Providence Point Umbrella Board, and the board that does represent the entirety of the 1,300 units or excuse me, 1,000 units in Providence Point. And I've submitted letters to you dated September 27, October 2, and October 9. I'm not going to repeat those letters to you tonight. I know you've read them and you've carefully considered them. I will say one thing. I've been going to land use hearings for the better part of my professional life, which is more than 40 years. And this hearing is absolutely unique, because no one has discussed the property. Have you noticed that? Staff says, well, it's now owned by the Issaquah School District. And Issaquah School District says, well, we own the property. There's not one word in this record from staff or from the district that considers the nature of this property or its surroundings. There is no staff report. There is no suggested findings for the commission to act on to show consistency with the comprehensive plan. None of this exists. I mean, what's going on in Issaquah that we don't have that kind of consideration? Now, the question before you, is this property suitable and acceptable for CFF uses? That's the question before you, both as to the comp plan and the rezone. I suggest to you that the significant amount of information that's been provided by the community indicates only one conclusion that you can reach, and that is that it's not suitable because there's nothing on the other side. Property doesn't become suitable for use just because somebody buys it. Costco doesn't walk in here and say, we need to have this property for our store, and then you'd say, oh, okay, well, fine, you're Costco, we can do that for you. So I want to talk about some conditions that I put in the report, and these follow up from commission members. We would ask, if you do decide to consider this, to take parcel 3 and spread it out along the area of Providence Point to provide a buffer, to enhance that buffer, and to not approve for the property any element, only one school, and have the football stadium, if that's a part of the proposal, not be permitted or allowed. I'm hesitant even to bring that up when there isn't any showing about this property, but I'm going to anyway. You found it in my plan. It's up on the board here. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Well, we're not going to take any questions or give any questions right now, so thank you for your detailed report. Francie, would you spill? Okay.
Good evening. My name's Francie Greth-Pito. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with all of you, and I can be very brief because most of what I have written has been well addressed by the folks that have spoken before me, the professionals from other walks of life and from Providence Point. The issue that I would like to bring up tonight has to do with it's an environmental issue, and so it most likely will be included in the SEPA. I certainly hope it would. I would like to, I object to the rezoning. I think that at this point it's premature. The issue that I'm concerned about environmentally is has to do with the potential environmental impact of asbestos left in the area from the dismantling, the demolition of the cement dormitories and part of the cement blocks on the building of the education center from this site. And when I witnessed before they put the barriers up on the roads. I witnessed the demolition of one of these dormitories that was made of cement block, concrete block. And they were demolished by heavy equipment. The walls blew out. The cement blocks tumbled down onto the carpet of the ground below. The dust rained down. And then other equipment came in and crushed up those blocks. And the important issue here is that concrete contains asbestos. Concrete contains, Portland cement certainly, contains silica, which can move into our lungs either by dust or by handling. And silicosis, I think most of us have heard about silicosis, which can damage your airway and your pulmonary system. So that's something that needs to be addressed for any rezoning, to find out what happened to all that concrete dust. And you know, where I lived in California, there was a school district that had a huge project, and they had a problem with a high school and a middle school next to it. And they built this school with serpentine rock, which is very accessible in California, in Central California. And the serpentine rock, when broken down, had the same effect as concrete, and it caused a lot of pulmonary problems for the kids.
Thank you.
And a lot of money. Thank you.
Tim? Tim?
I think my colleagues ahead of me have covered all the. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment tonight?
Should I go up there?
Yes.
I didn't sign up, I didn't intend to do a comment, but I have a little background on this because in...
Could you state your name?
Yes, my name is Pat Martin. I live at Providence Point for 10 years, and I was on the Grounds Committee in 2017 and 16 with Ernie Wolf, who started off this whole thing. What are we going to do with that property? Is it going to be houses, or are we going to have a school? And what are we going to do as a community? Which would we like? Daphne was on that committee. John was on that committee at that time. And we did meet with the superintendent and the Board of Education, and Ernie met often. And the name of my talk tonight is I'm disappointed. I was excited of the choice. I thought it would be, I'm a teacher of 43 years, and I thought it would be great to get back in the, the superintendent said to us that night, we're going to have a nice buffer, it's going to be quiet, we're going to have an elementary school, we're not going to have lights or any of that stuff. I've never even thought of a football field. I was still in my nice little condo, which is very close to the wall, and I was thinking about how I like the darkness there the first time in my life. I was thinking that everything's fine, and now I can go to the new school and I can volunteer, and maybe I'll volunteer to be the person who coordinates this for our community, and we'll get a lot of folks over there to help. We're not bad people, and we do like children a lot. And we volunteer in the neighborhood, in the city, a lot of ways, and in the state and all over the place. And so anyway, I'm just really disappointed, and I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's too much, too many, and I don't know what we can do, but I think compromise, we thought we were compromising then, and we thought we were going to have this kind of good thing. I'm disappointed. I hope you can do something about it for us.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a comment?
Can we ask a question?
There's a gentleman at the back. Joan?
What?
There's a gentleman at the back wants to make a comment.
Yeah, if you want to make a comment, come to the
Or if you'd like to make a question, you're welcome to take 3 minutes to speak. We can't answer directly, but this is our time to hear you. But you're welcome to come to the microphone with any questions, concerns, or comments that you have for us to hear.
Oh, there's somebody up there already.
Hello, I'm Karen Stevens, and I spoke at the first meeting. I'm a resident of Providence Point, Highland Village. And my question is, my understanding was that this projected area is about 40 acres. I wanted to know, what are the King County or state or city regulations of land requirement for an elementary school and for a high school? And how are you going to shoehorn that into that 40 acres? Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a comment? The gentleman that was up there. Connie, you're next.
Growing pains. As I'm getting hard of hearing, please hear me out at this hearing. And while I'm at it...
Your name?
I'll get to them, getting that. My vision isn't what it used to be, so with all due respects, I must not be the only one. I'm Russ Miller. Transplant has lived and worked in the area for over 3 decades. My wife is a native who taught school for over 45 years, starting here in this lovely place. The reason why my friends and neighbors at Providence Point and the rest of us care is just that. We love Issaquah, and like proud parents, want the best for those who come after us. I've seen firsthand how the growth in the greater Seattle area has tripled, and who could have seen it coming, especially Issaquah. Change is a mixed bag. And no, I'm not a gambling man. I'll bet that because of the need, a school, hopefully singular, adjoining property gets built. Students await, and I know the push is on. The powers that be are under pressure and somewhat limited by state law for how things get done. And I get that. But my fear is that you're moving too fast on this project. So we humbly ask that the planners think outside the box and not create another cookie-cutter campus. Issaquah has so much potential. The area was just reported to be the richest in the state. It can be the model community that inspires while keeping the small city charm. Build solar, build green, unconventional can be beautiful. Plant more trees to replace the ones you're cutting down. Now, no one has a crystal ball. See technology. Who could have, after all, believed the kingdom after such a short lifespan be imploded, or our traffic congestion? But we can, with greater insight and vision, build something that lasts for our grandkids and their kids to be proud of. It's a challenge for all of us, and I encourage and employ our city planners to do the right thing. We only get one chance. Change and growth can be beneficial for our community that we cherish so dearly. Please work with us on our requested concessions. Traffic now, traffic wow. I love football, but can't stadiums be shared? Thank you.
Thank you. Connie?
My name's Connie Martian. I don't live in Providence. My name's Connie Martian. I don't live in anywhere around you all. I live over on Squawk, and I think you are amazing. So I'm reading the comprehensive plan again because I do that for fun in my spare time. And I gotta say, everything in the comprehensive plan says not only you can not have a football stadium, You're supposed to, with a compact school, share facilities. You are supposed to use the smallest amount of land possible, and it continues to tell you you're supposed to be building the right thing in the right place so as not to impact the people around you. So to have the school district come out with a plan that is likely not even what the rules would allow them to build and cause such concern for everyone is not new. They have a habit of doing it, and so the city and the school district, to solve this problem now and in the future, need to figure out a way to mutually read the comprehensive plan and create a legitimate plan for review if you are going to somehow be meshing your rezones with new schools. Because this is, I think, the third time I've been in this almost identical hearing in the space of 2 years, and it has not been solved, and it needs to be solved. That's not you all. I'm actually speaking to people sort of above you from here. Now, so I'm all for what they're talking about, but I have a different topic of conversation, and that is the old Costco parcel rezone. That is mitigation, yet for some reason we're going to rezone it community facilities, which means that you can build buildings on it, and you can use it for huge utilities. And it is a mitigation parcel for road impacts. It should be community facilities, open space. And there has been no rationale for why it would be anything different than that, because it's protected already. They're making wetlands out of it. And as Mr. Rambrew said, they don't show you what's on it and why it should be a different zone, and I think that is huge information that needs to be changed for the future for all these rezone conversations, because how can anybody make an intelligent decision if you can't see or know what's on the land, right? So remember that one. It's the Costco parcel. I forget what number it is, but it's a mitigation parcel, community facilities, open space, not community facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. We support each other, yeah. Would anybody else like to make a comment this evening? Please come to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Tina Conforti. I don't live in Providence Point, but I heard all these people. I am so concerned about it, this project. These people, they work all of their life for the retirement in peace and tranquility. How can Issaquah don't think about it? What is their right and their retirement? I really think that Mr. Ross, he made a very good point, a plan of transportation you are. And I think most of my comment to the city council, they are on a safety issue. For children, pedestrian, we don't even plan ahead. What are the safety on the road? So let's give the safety to everyone, and let's give them a peaceful tranquility to the people they deserve after they work all of their life. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a comment? Would anybody else like to make a comment? Third time, would anybody like to make an additional comment on any of the land use rezone? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:07 and open it up for discussion among the commissioners. If you would like to ask a question of anybody that spoke, you can call them out and ask a question if you want at this point in time, or you can make any comments. So with that, are there any comments? First of all, I want to call out the first 1, 2, and 3 and just discuss 1, 2, and 3 at this point in time. and look at the other 5 rezones after we make a decision on this one, if that's okay with you. So we don't confuse the issues. So, any comments that you would like to make?
I'd like to start by asking staff if they would like to respond to any of the comments they heard tonight. We had direct questions, we had direct comments. I want to see if there's anything that staff wants to add right now.
Unless you have questions on it. You have things you would like us to respond to. Oh, I'm sorry.
Robin?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 questions, actually, primarily of Mr. Mullen, the Issaquah School District representative.
Would you please come to the microphone?
Sit up to the mic.
And sit up, yeah.
Yes.
And this is a question for both planning and for you, sir, at the first. Am I correct in understanding that either in 2017 and 8 or 18, there's an agreement between the school district and the city that the compact school design that you'll use going forward, for budgetary reasons, I think, but would not be applicable for the particular development under the bond funding that was raised in 2016? Am I correct in that?
I'll have to say that I'm brand new to the director of capital projects. I wasn't part of those talks that they had, so I would be remiss in trying to answer that.
The reason I ask you, and I guess, Trish, can you answer that question? Was there an agreement made? Because the comment about compact schools was raised.
It's my understanding that when you all went out for the bond, the prices that you used, the estimates for the cost, were based on suburban schools or whatever the name would be, before we worked out the compact school regulations that go for smaller site plans, higher, more efficient use of land. And because they hadn't put the extra cost, because it's more costly to build up and more efficient than it is to build out, they didn't have enough money in the bond to be able to do all the schools in with that kind of a design. There was no commitment we didn't sign a memorandum of understanding or anything like that, but in our discussions of having a compact school code, they informed us that when they went out for the bond, those were not the cost estimates used for the bond, and so that they probably wouldn't have the funding to make all of the new schools fit the compact design that we worked out afterwards. Jump in.
Hi, Keith Niven, Director.
I have a reason for asking that question.
Yeah, and I'm going to contradict my staff, so I felt like I needed to come up. So if I understood your question, it was...
Who are you?
Hi, everybody. Keith Niven, Director of Development Services. So if your question was, do the compact standards apply to this property if it's rezoned, redesignated to community facilities? The answer is yes. And what Trish was responding to was there's actually 2 gradations of compactness. What we talked about was the first step was compact schools, and the second step was urban schools. And we had an urban set of standards and a compact set of standards that we talked about with the school district. And these ones that are in code now would apply to this property.
As compact or urban?
As compact.
Okay, I ask it because we're charged here with trying to deliberate on a rezone to a classification that permits a variety of uses, one of which is a school, okay?
Right. So
I've read in the bond indenture, I read the verbiage behind the raising of the $16-odd million. Pacifica laws use the word comprehensive school. In our zoning, there's the word school, and I don't understand what the word school it means. And I'm not talking about philosophical lack of understanding. I'm talking about an infrastructural lack of understanding. I'm trying to figure out, well, if this is going to be rezoned, and we're indirectly then permitting the possibility of a school or schools, what does it mean to permit a school? Does that mean a football stadium? Were those ancillary uses contemplated in the $16 million bond fund? So it's partly, what's the definition of a school? What's encompassed? And that was why I wanted to ask the representative from the school district, what are we talking about when we talk about schools?
He left quickly, I noticed.
He did. He got out of there really fast.
So there's two parts, I think, to your question. One is, what does the school district plan to put on the property if there is a high school and elementary school there, in terms of buildings and facilities like stadiums or not? The other piece is what's in code in terms of what requirements have to be followed for the permitting of a school. And the compact standards envision a smaller footprint for the school. Right. There's been a lot of concern raised by the community about the initial land plan that the school district has developed for the property. Staff have not okayed that concept. There's tree retention, there's a minimum floor area ratio that needs to be accomplished on the property. And so there's a number of things that we will be doing when we actually get a formal permit application in discussing that with the school district to make sure that it meets the code requirements. From a city standpoint, from a school district standpoint, what they plan to actually include on the property, I'm going to let Mr. Mullins respond to that.
Thank you. And by the way, I know we are not supposed to consider the actual nature of the development. I'm just trying to understand, when you use the word school, and it was in the budget and in the funding, does that include a football stadium, for example?
Well,
tennis courts, et cetera, et cetera?
In the 2016 bond, we had multiple schools that were approved, 4 new, 2 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high. There were some other rebuilds and different.
Right.
Yep. And high school, the 3 high schools we have in the district have football fields, tennis courts, parking lots, and such. So that was, I think, always the plan in our mind. A comprehensive high school included all of those. We have an equity that goes throughout the district, school to school, whether it be playgrounds and things like that in elementaries, multi-purpose rooms, gymnasiums, these kind of things, and trying to keep all of the schools north to south equitable.
So in searching over the years for sites, and you've done an exhaustive search, the assumption that the criteria for the sites that you have looked at and accepted or rejected all contemplated being large enough and zoned appropriately to accommodate school, football stadiums, et cetera, et cetera. Is that right?
We would hope that they would be zoned appropriately enough to be able to do that. There aren't large tracts of community facilities properties out there that would already be zoned community facility and be able to accommodate a high school.
No.
Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, the zoning now, as I understand it, would allow an elementary and a middle school, but wouldn't allow a high school.
Okay.
That's my understanding. So henceforth, we are bought property under the assumption that we would, not under the assumption, but the hope that we would be able to rezone to.
So if you saw a site, for example, that was just large enough to accommodate the structure of a school, I'm talking now the educational part of it, the academic part of it, with maybe some administrative offices. Perhaps it was 2 or 3 acres, for example. You could perhaps share with some other school a football stadium, which is part of actually of the growth management aspirations. Would you eliminate that site because it's not large enough?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. No, that's going forward, just as an individual, given the importance of education in this city, we have no land, per the comments coming out from you and from your lawyer, going forward, and whatever happens here with these schools, 10 years down the road, we're going to have the same issue. What's the plan if there's no land? What's the plan?
I would like to be able to predict the future and know what that plan would be, but we're dealing with a commitment we made, and the voters of Issaquah voted in for a comprehensive high school, and elementary, 2 elementaries and a middle. And we have certain amenities that we were hoping to be able to do for these properties. Would we buy a piece of property that could only handle just the physical building, no parking, no nothing like that, and everybody would be bused to the site? Probably not. You know, who's to say then how many parking spots you need? And would we have even a basketball court, or would all the kids just stay inside? And you know, your deal about putting just a box on a site doesn't, I don't kind of understand where your question is going.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate your answer. I
Yeah.
really do. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience.
With your permission, I think I have a follow-up, but it's only with your permission.
Restricted everybody in this audience to 3 minutes. She's had her 3 minutes, and she can get up
If
and
you
talk.
have another question that you want to, if we want to ask any of you a question, we have a right to ask the question. I think the question was Robin's, and he specifically asked for the school district to answer the question.
Is it okay if I do a follow-up to answer directly with regard to what is the plan in the future for purposes of finding school sites when there's no land available? The plan is to work with the city as directed in the comprehensive plan, to work together to provide for the public infrastructure, this being the schools, to support the growth that the city is permitting. And that plan, in this case, has been laid out in the comprehensive plan and through the city code with those compact school siting mechanisms. And that is why you're seeing 2 schools proposed here on what normally the state code would require 40 acres for 1 high school site. The district is shrinking that down consistent with the compact schools.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I want to clarify something that I think is not common knowledge. Right now, the only thing that would drastically change right now is the permitting of a high school. Currently, an elementary school and a middle school are able to be built on site under the current code. Can you verify that that's correct, Trish? Correct. Right. So the big change that right now the school district is asking is, in my mind, really was this issue was exacerbated by announcing a site plan that right now the school district isn't standing by, the city isn't standing by, and everybody's been very upset with the projected site plan, that it's completely hypothetical and nobody is willing to stand by right now. I'd like to say for the record that I hope the school district can learn from this and see that this is not the way to engage with communities, and this is not the way to try to drum up support in a community that wants to support schools and wants to support children. And the way that this came about did not come about very well. And for the record, I think that it's important to recognize that how we build schools starts with how we build them with our neighbors, and that did not happen here.
So, quick question for the city. What are the current enforceable setbacks for any new school or high school on this land?
I'd have to go to my PowerPoint slide. It's 7 feet. Can't read it from here.
Oh, it's 7. Side and rear
It is.
setbacks.
Right, side and rear setbacks are 7 feet, and
I believe there's a footnote that says if it's next to a residential area, it takes that setback.
it does. It says if the adjacent use is single-family, then the side and/or rear yard setbacks is the same as the contiguous zoning. And that would be whatever the zoning is, the setbacks are for single-family small lot.
They're not single family.
And then the build-to line for the front is 20 feet, 0 to 20 feet.
Right.
Okay.
So if the school district comes in with a plan and follows those guidelines, does the city throw up their hands and say, that's what the guidelines are and we have to approve it?
I don't believe so, but I would ask Keith to come up because he does more current planning than I have ever done.
So these are minimum standards, and a lot of, it's like putting together a puzzle when you do a site plan review. You have to make sure that you meet all the standards. There's also things that are not on here, like tree retention. There's a wetland on the site, which has its buffers, that's going to need to be, kept out of. And so as we review what they include on the plan, you then weigh it against the code requirements. You also then incorporate public comments to the best ability that you can. And then that ultimately goes to the Development Commission, where there's a hearing. There'll be another opportunity for the community to participate in that. There's also, before staff even really starts doing a review on the plan, we have a community conference. So there'll be an opportunity for the community to talk to the school district, and the school district to hopefully incorporate and think about the comments. They're getting a lot of comments tonight, but there will be more specific comments when there's actually a plan that we can all stand around and look at. So to answer your question, could they do the minimum? They could do the minimum. At the end of the day, it's usually some combination of minimum plus other stuff as it fits on the site. And this is not all of the standards that are going to apply to that site. This is just kind of the density provisions from the code. So it's more complicated, I guess, than just this.
But in essence, if all of the wetlands are over on the other side of the property or whatever, they could come in with 7 feet, and you have no recourse but to approve it based on what is written on this. If there are no mitigating circumstances, like these have to be 8 feet or whatever it is, basically, if there is nothing else that comes in there, you as a city will have to approve it.
We have to approve it as long as it's meeting code.
Which is, yeah.
And the current code means they wouldn't be forced necessarily to add a buffer of any kind other than 7 feet.
Right. So part of this process can include, I don't know, I haven't been to all these meetings, so my apologies. But you guys can actually place conditions on your recommendation for this particular piece of the comp plan docket. So even if it's not specific, even if it was that you want to give direction to the city council to consider a vegetated buffer or something along the perimeter with Providence Point, you could do that. That's within your ability to do. So as you think about your choices, I want to make sure you understand there's kind of no edges to how you recommend this move forward to the city council.
Keith, in your experience, when schools are being built, does the Issaquah School District generally ask for exemptions on a site plan?
So the answer historically was yes, which is one of the reasons why we changed the code for the compact schools, because it was more in line with what they were asking for. So besides the fact that we were recognizing that the footprints needed to shrink because there just was not available land at the historic sizes that they were requiring for their facilities, it was also, like, for example, their schools were taller than what the code would allow, so they'd ask for a deviation standards for that. And so what we did with these updated standards was the expectation is they should be able to meet all of these standards at a minimum.
So if tonight we make a recommendation that the Issaquah School District doesn't find favorable to them, while we make a recommendation to council, they can also go to council and make their own recommendation and supersede whatever we decide here tonight. Is that correct?
Who's they?
Issaquah School District.
So the school district has the opportunity to participate in the public process as well. So they can, so the rezone and redesignation of the property to CFF is a legislative process through the city council as the decision maker. And so as a legislative process, the council members can talk to members of the community, both Providence Point and people that are supportive of the school district's proposal, and so they can get that information and have conversations as part of a legislative process.
Quick question on the bond. Were design plans or standards part of, like, specific language, part of the bond? So did the bond say, hey, we want the money to build a high school, and it comes with a football stadium, it comes with, or was it generic?
I'm going to defer to someone who knows the bond.
My question.
I would have to look into the bond exact language. The bond, the line item that I've been looking at says fourth comprehensive high school. There's a lot more backup during the bond committee discussions and what more specifics, and I would have to get that information and get it to you.
Okay. Right now, we're not sure if you say, hey, I found land, but I can't build a stadium, you don't know if that would apply to the bond or not.
If we stated in the bond that it listed a stadium, we would have purchased land that would be able to sustain a stadium, but I don't know that it listed specifically in the bond language.
It's my recollection that it did not.
Did not.
I also have one question, Mr. Mullen.
Yep.
Yeah, as far as being able to build a middle school and an elementary school, wouldn't one of those facilities also require a football/soccer track field as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's right, taking comments from her. They're a field, they have the lights, they have it, but they're not a stadium. They don't have the seating. Pine Lake Middle School is a good example.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Could I ask a question of you, Tricia or Kristen? I'm looking at page, it talks about land use policy G6 and G7. Okay, I can give you the page numbers, but, and back to this idea of the compact school design, which I believe is applicable here.
74 of 213.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It says the least amount of land for development and supporting infrastructure that is reasonable under the circumstances, using nearby public parks and recreational facilities when available, and minimizing the use of modular units. And the next one is when appropriate to provide shared use of facilities, on and off recreational facilities. So my reason for bringing it up is back to this, the whole issue around what is a school, and do all the facilities that are defined under the word school have to be on the same site? And we're going around in this, but it looks to me as if these are our own land use policies. And we should be at least forcing or encouraging the use of shared facilities like football stadiums that might exist somewhere else, where we can. And
Right, and I think the policy that you read is the policy that underpins the actual code language that talks about smaller sites, taller buildings, but the policy itself can't force that to happen, but it tells the city's intent of what a compact school is, and that we believe that shared facilities are okay. And that comes into the negotiation when they have a site plan.
Which is why I asked you initially about the compact versus non-compact design criteria, where I thought there was an agreement with the city, but apparently there's not.
So the sharing, I just want to add, the sharing is not, sorry, it's late and it's been a long day. It does not only mean that they could share like a stadium between two schools. It's also intended to envision that those, if they build facilities like a football stadium or a soccer field, that could be a shared facility with City Parks Department. So rather than us having to build a park nearby, they would have also a soccer field on it, that we would have a relationship with the school district where we could make use of facilities that they would provide on their property. And we do that already in other places in the city. So that shared terminology that's not necessarily inclusive only of school to school. It could be school to city.
Thank you.
If for some reason we approved this rezone and the school district was not able, because of SEPA, environmental, and all the other issues, were not able to build on that, would it automatically go back to what it is, or would we have to come through and go through this again and have it rezoned?
I would say if the school district had to sell it, because the school didn't work, we would rezone it when it, like if a developer of single family bought it, we would have to take it out of community facilities to make it not publicly owned for public use.
What if somebody came in there and wanted to build something else that was legal under?
They'd have to be a public entity. You mean if like King County came in to build a courthouse?
Yeah.
We would entertain whatever project application they had, as long as it fit in with the listing and the code provisions.
I know I've struggled with this. We've spent a lot of time on it. I'm sure my fellow commissioners have spent as much time as I had reading through these documents and looking at this. I find right now that we need schools desperately, and our community has a unique opportunity with this parcel. And what I hope to achieve right now is that we are able to have a compromise where we are able to both find a way not only for the existing community that is around these parcels, but also for the future of the parcel. I think what that really means is saying that we hope that a school does come onto this site. I don't know right now that 2 schools, or that one of those schools being a comprehensive high school is the best use of this property, considering a lot of the uses that are currently happening right now. We talk about neighbors like Providence Point, but we also have neighbors like wildlife and the stream that need to be considered. And right now, designating all 3 parcels as community facilities allows something that I'm not comfortable with at this level. But what I want to do is encourage this parcel be used as the school district intended for a school. I can't say right now to a specific site plan, but I can say that allowing all 3 parcels to have complete, near complete impervious surfaces put on is not in the best health of the parcels and in the community. So I put forward 2 meetings ago that we consider something else with these 3 parcels to my fellow commissioners. And I would be interested to see if anyone has a discussion about that right now. Or if I'm alone, and right now there is a consensus to go ahead and move forward with the current proposal by the city for sites 1, 2, and 3.
I kind of am in a kind of agreement in the same way that I felt like the Issaquah School District could have done a better job putting out this conceptual idea. Unfortunately, it sounds like it caused a lot of confusion, and sound like there were some people in this audience who were willing to, at the very least, hear proposals for possibly an elementary school, but it seems like the school district might have got themselves too far in front of themselves. So ultimately, I agree with my commissioner on the left that this particular parcels are going to be developed, whether it's small lots, whether it's a school. I prefer to see schools. There is going to be traffic. There is going to be clearing of land. There is going to be construction. However, I also heard what the community had to say tonight, and putting a high school, a comprehensive high school, a compact high school with an elementary seems excessive, and also it doesn't seem like there was a lot of involvement with Providence Point, which is a shame. But I would agree, I think these parcels would serve a school district far more than they will another plat of small homes. So yes, I would agree with that. How we move forward, if we're willing to make conditions on parcel 3, I mean, again, it's hard to say without seeing some type of conception from the school district other than just boundary lines.
Would you like to see a new design before you make a decision?
It's hard because it is a narrow focus that we're being asked to do tonight, which is simply to upzone. And I understand that the school district isn't going to spend all of this money, but I suppose something is better than what's going on right now, which is a lot of confusion amongst the community. And again, I'll state it, there seemed to be some support from the community to have a school there. I just think that they're pretty fearful, and rightfully so. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with Bellwood and Providence Point, and you have another plat that I think just went in across the street of about 30 small homes. So again, I think it's not the building that I think the citizens are concerned with. It's the amount that they're trying to squeeze into these two parcels and not really having an idea of what the Issaquah School District is planning to do.
And our role really is a recommendation to council. And I can't, in good faith, believe that the school district isn't going to make a bid, regardless of what we do tonight, that is going to be largely out of our control. So the best that I can do is to say from where I sit, what I think the best thing is for our community as we grow. I think that it's important to have a school on this site, and I don't believe right now that it is important to rezone this to allow for a comprehensive high school. And right now, this site allows us to put schools on it. So I had proposed that right now we put parcel 3 as not as community facilities, and instead that we put it as community facilities open space. My recommendation for that is to require a large buffer, not a small buffer, but a huge tract of land that will allow there to still be some of the unique characteristics that exist on the property. I think this then still allows the bulk of the acreage of both parcel 2 of 28.86 acres and parcel 1 of being 5.8 acres to be allowed for the school to use for what they think is going to be able to best serve the community. And that's where I defer to the school district, for them to be able to say this is what the community needs and we're going to provide that. I can't speak to a site plan, and I don't need to see a site plan because that's not really what we're here to do right now.
No.
But I absolutely want to convey to council that right now, the way that the parcels are situated, that parcel 3 really should not be built on. And parcel 3 should be used as the buffer zone. And with parcel 3, that means that allowing the school district to build to the minimum setback of 7 feet will still allow there to be a diversity within this parcel that currently exists.
Is that a motion then, Joy?
No.
Right now, I'm trying to see if there's any backing right now or if I'm alone in having this designation.
I'd like to suggest that this parcel, these 3 parcels, be taken entirely out of this package. I think the process of asking us to deliberate on a rezoning from one use, which has a public benefit. I mean, we might not all want to see more houses, but they're in the necessity in this city, and I can see an argument for some public benefit. We're moving from one public benefit to something else. I'm not sure it's an upzone or just a rezone. And so I think the process of trying to rezone this without going through the steps and addressing the issues and concerns that various experts have put forward, as well as all the audience, eliminates a critical step. So I'd like to suggest that we take all 3 sites out of this consideration and recommend to council that this site be rezoned to a designation which permits schools and let the school district come forward with their plans and make that rezoning contingent on a full approval of their plans or not. Yeah, so I'd go one step further. I just think this whole process is inappropriate for this critical path site.
I suppose I'm more in agreement with my commissioner to the left, that again, I would like to see this lot used to actually build a school. However, Providence Point's a unique community in Issaquah, and I understand that. And I also understand that just down the road is Bellwood, and just beyond that, a medical facility. It is unique. And I also understand that the school district's concerned. The school district is having a hard time to find places to teach our young people. So I'm more in agreement that we keep parcel 3 basically facilities open, to keep that as a buffer for the city to work with a unique piece of property that is Providence Point community, but leaving 2 and 3 with the ability to, I don't even think it's necessary we do anything, because it sounds like they can already build an elementary or a middle school on those two.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, if we redesignate it to community facilities recreation instead of facilities, CFF, and we did recreation, that would allow still the current code of an elementary and a middle school. However, it wouldn't allow the high school, no?
The only thing that would allow schools would be facilities, community facilities.
So I'm okay with doing that with 2 and 1.
Unless
and then
it's a
leaving
grade
3
school.
as
Well,
open.
no, a grade
You
school.
couldn't put a grade school in recreation.
Well,
You can
the
keep
way
a
it's-
grade school in single family.
In single family.
Right,
the
Okay.
so if you
zone.
don't change anything, you can get 2 schools in there.
And that's, again, that's another question more for the school district. I mean, to my mind, it seems more reasonable to have a middle school and an elementary school together, not a high school. Plus, the high school also has, stadium requirements that the middle school wouldn't. So again, I'm in favor of 1 and 2 being community facilities.
Facilities, yeah.
Number 3 being open.
So before I make a motion, I do want to say that we really appreciate your involvement. This is why we have meetings, this is why we volunteer, and this is why the city is structured like this, is to allow for this kind of involvement. So as this project moves forward, please make your voices heard. Please continue to raise your concerns and continue to be open to work and compromise with the school district, because we know that change is hard and Issaquah is growing, and we want to do that in the right way that's good for all members of our community as best as we can. And so we want to encourage you to continue to be involved in this project. You have every right as a neighbor to be proud of what's coming in next to you, and to not resent it. And so we really hope that moving forward, you guys continue to be involved. We want to thank you for your voices being heard, and we want to say that we know that this process can feel arduous, but that we do hear you.
Well said, Commissioner Lewis.
So with that being said, on parcels 1, 2, and 3, I would like to make a motion to council that we designate parcel number 3 as community facilities open space, and we keep the current designation of single-family lot on parcels 1 and 2.
I second it.
Is there any discussion? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just think, again, for the lawyer, parcel number 3 impacts only one part of Providence Point.
Right.
We're still left
Well,
with...
no, it borders all of the buildings.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It borders
doesn't.
5 of the buildings right now.
But not all of them. And we are, effectively, we are trying to make a site plan layout through the back door here. And I think that that's not what we're here to do. That amendment does not address all the transportation, environmental, and other issues that has been so succinctly put forward tonight. So I just...
Those are supposed to be addressed in the subsequent project.
I know, but we're trying to do something here. We're trying to accommodate, we're trying to make some sort of motion that apparently addresses some of these issues. And I'm suggesting that number 3 alone does nothing for most of these issues, including it does nothing for the buildings that are directly adjacent to 2 and 1. So,
There's a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and we need to vote on it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Well, the motion carries because it's 3 against 2.
Can you speak up a little, please?
Motion carries. Well, it's complicated, and Joy, explain what you just said.
Okay, so right now, the city proposed for lots 1, 2, and 3 to be designated community facilities, CFF. Currently, they're single-family, small lot. That's what it currently is. What we just voted and passed was to recommend to council that parcel 3 be changed to community facilities open space. That does not allow anything that is of vast building on it and is open space that, again, what will then happen to parcels 1 and 2 will to remain as they are currently zoned as single-family small lot. And to break that down, that currently allows for both a middle school or an elementary school to be built. However, we are recommending to council right now that none of these parcels allow for a comprehensive high school to be built.
Let's see, what's the quorum?
Will you talk through the other ones?
Yeah, are we done with this now?
Wait.
No. Yeah, I'm
Is
waiting.
Robbins an alternate?
Yeah.
But we already had a quorum?
He didn't.
Well, there's 5 of us.
There's 5 of us over here.
So,
Yeah, he's not eligible to vote. 3 to 1, right?
Well.
3 to 2.
3 to 2.
It's 3 to 2.
okay, so 3 to 2 because Robbins an alternate.
Right.
So,
I opposed.
Right. As did Joan.
Right.
Yeah.
oh, correct. So we're good? Okay.
Okay, 3 to 2?
So I don't,
Oh, wait, hang on though. Susan still has 3 to 3 though, so somebody didn't.
me.
Joan.
I said a no.
You were a no?
Yes.
I didn't vote against it based on the result. I just didn't think that taking out parcel 3 did enough to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish because half of the houses were still.
Yeah. Yes, Joan and Janice were against. Yep. Joan, I completely agree with you but at large, I'm not able to address all the issues right now. You know?
I understand, but I don't, well, we've already voted, so it doesn't make any difference, but I just want to be clear that the end result of not having multiple triple schools built on that property, it's not accomplished by taking out parcel 3 and keeping everything else the same. If you wanted to keep everything the same, you should have kept all of it the same, and then you would have had the ability to build 2 schools on it. By taking out 3 and making it open space, you're eliminating a lot of stuff, is in my opinion. But at any rate, that's what stands.
3 to 3 a tie?
Not 3 to 3.
So you're not counting the alternate vote?
Once we have a quorum, the alternate doesn't count, right?
Okay, I just wanted, because this is sensitive, I just wanted to be sure.
I know, it's
what
3 to
you're
2.
thinking. Okay, so it's 3 to 2.
So what we're doing right now is we're making sure that procedurally that we're all on the same page with our very astute reporter, and we're recording our votes so that for the record, it's all accurate, is what we've been talking about.
There are 5 members on this board that are permanent members, and there is 1 as an alternate. And as an alternate, you don't vote if there is a quorum with the permanent members. And so we're just clearing up the fact of who voted, how many voted for and against we're not continuing on the discussion.
There's already been a vote.
It's already voted on, and it's going to go to council the way it is.
And I would like to say, Trish, that the intent of the motion is to say that we want to protect green space. There's the intent of limiting the amount of building that is on the site, and then also specifically limiting the uses of the site to being elementary and middle schools.
I was more worried about the numbers. I understood the intent completely. I just wanted to get the logistics of the numbers
Okay,
right.
so we're clear on that.
So we still have other business in front of us.
Yes, we do. We have another 5 to vote on.
Yes.
We only voted on 1, 2, and 3, so we have 5 more to.
Majority of them.
Are there any questions?
Yes, so I would like to go back to parcel 12, and...
Could we be quiet so we can continue our meeting?
Oh, we have a red clip here, sorry, just that bound together.
You should clip.
So on parcel 12, the 2 meetings ago when we first discussed this, I had asked you about the redesignation, and as you said tonight, the difference was the road. So it was my understanding from talks that it was the designation that made the most sense, however, nothing would be built on the site. So is there something that basically guarantees that says that facilities won't also then include something else?
The development agreement with Costco says that nothing else will be built there.
Okay.
And I was told by my higher up not too long ago that nothing
So
can
I
happen
would really
there.
appreciate it if you would be quiet, so we can continue our meeting.
And the reason for community facilities, that road was never platted. It's just an easement across that parcel. So there is a road on that parcel, which was the reason for community facilities.
So a road is part of community facilities? I didn't understand that as part of the uses. Utilities, I understand, but a road is utility, is that right?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, sorry.
So how does the Costco agreement, how does it override the designation? So if it's facilities, but we can't build because there's an existing agreement?
Yes. That's what I was told, but I may again defer. But he's tied up.
Keith?
No, he's not.
Agreements aren't, Kristen, agreements aren't always in perpetuity. Or does this truly run with the land?
This is true. This development agreement is 20 years, I think this one is.
So after, on the 21st year, if that's correct,
Right.
then something actually could be built on that site.
Would Keith Niven please come to the front?
Approach the microphone if you are able.
It would have to be a
Sir?
community facility.
Apparently,
He's making his way through the crowd. I can verify. He's heard our call.
Yeah. So I asked this question earlier about this particular parcel, and I don't understand how a piece of property that's being used as mitigation can be rezoned and with the possibility of being built on.
We're talking 12 and 13 right now.
We're talking the Costco mitigation properties, specifically the one on the left, that the road goes over just the southeast corner. Do you need me to pull it up?
I'm sure he has it just right on top of his head.
So my understanding, so I assume the question, sorry, I was distracted. I assume the question was, why is it being recommended CFF and not CFOS? My understanding is, so typically when we do public roads, we do that within dedicated right-of-way. And if you ever look at our zoning maps, you'll see there's big swaths of white because right-of-way isn't zoned. It's basically nothing. 62nd Street is actually not right-of-way. It's got an easement on this property. And so because it clips this property and is on this property, if we do OS, which we can, it would be non-conforming. So we'd be creating a non-conformity, and you tend to not want to do that because it's just a weird, you don't, it's like land use stuff, so stop making faces. So that would be the outcome. If the commission wanted to recommend OS, do so knowing that you're going to create a nonconformity because we have a road in what would be OS, which is not allowed. All right?
What are the impacts of a non-conforming use in this particular context? What does that mean in real world stuff?
So non-conforming uses are restricted in how they, so if act of God, so lightning comes down, destroys the road, a non-conforming use can be built back as is if it is demolished through act of God. And most of the time, nonconformities are things like you have an auto repair shop in a zone that doesn't allow that anymore. Okay, if I wanted to expand my auto repair shop in a nonconforming zone, I could only do that in a small increment. The code is specific about how much you can expand a nonconformity. So let's take worst case scenario. We create this nonconformity, and at some point, the city and Costco make another agreement, and this road wants to be 4 lanes instead of 2. Okay, we might have a problem at that point. I'm covering bases. So I just want you to take away, you create a nonconformity. The only issue about a nonconformity is there's limits to expansion of a nonconformity.
How long is the development agreement with Costco?
30 years.
So on 31st year, then that, something could be built on that site. Is that right? Absent?
No. So that site, my understanding is that site is, as Ms. Marsh stated earlier, that site is a mitigation site, so it's got property encumbrances on it, like legal property encumbrances.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity, that run
Yes.
with the land.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? No other concerns with anything that,
I'm really happy to see that 11 is going to become, hopefully is on its way to becoming a school. It's something that we had talked about years ago as a possibility, and I'm excited about the prospect of it.
you know what kind of school is going to be on there?
The middle school.
Middle school?
And I'll note that there's no Tallis community people here protesting it.
Sites 5 through 9 or 10, I can't remember. 5 is wanting to be set aside for
Open space.
To link up with Cougar Mountain. That leaves roughly, I think it was 28 acres, which is the rest of the other sites, 4, whatever it is, through 10.
6 through 10. 4, 6, 7,
4,
8,
6,
9, 10.
thank you. I asked you this in an email. What's the idea of that you're holding that back as to be considered? What's the
Right,
plan?
they want to do a park plan for it to find out where are the trails, where will it hook up with Harvey Manning Park up at the top of Tallis, how will it hook into the Wildland Park to the west, and so they thought instead of having it all be zoned recreation, they wanted to be more careful on which pieces, maybe some of the pieces will be open space and some of them will be recreation, once they have a better idea of exactly where the trails will be and if there's a bathroom or if there's a whatever. So they wanted to wait and do the planning for it first and then ask for the rezone.
Definitely not for a school.
Oh, no, there's a lot of slope there, which is why the residential didn't work out.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the properties?
With hearing no other questions, I need a motion to accept the remaining 5 parcels, rezone as requested.
I'll make a motion to accept the rezoning proposal for the remaining 5 parcels.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And the rest of the elements, the land use element, transportation, utilities, parks, capital facilities, I think that's all of them.
Thank you for putting in, I had mentioned before about the rider for the impact fees. I like that. That makes me happy, leaving that for when it to be decided, so I appreciate that change.
Just could you explain something on page T4, page 20 out of 213? It's about the concurrency system, and you mentioned that there's an additional capacity of 11,527 vehicles, and about 6 lines down, and I'm just confused by how this all works, confirm the proposed development generates less than the trip bank capacity, starting at 8,441 trips, which was the old number. Why is it not, I'm confused as to why you've got 2 numbers going on there. How does that work?
Did we miss one?
Maybe I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I'm only asking how does it work?
Yeah, I think we just missed one. Confirm the proposed
because
development.
it looks like we missed one of the old numbers when we were putting in the new numbers from the.
Okay. All right, so I was less bewildered than I thought I was then. Thank you. So you'll make that change, I guess.
Good catch.
Anything else?
I'm sure you read it all.
It's fascinating.
I did. Approve it? We need a...
You need another motion for the rest
a
of
motion to approve the
remaining?
Comp plan as described in the findings of fact.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor, say, any additional comments? Just to go by Robert's rule? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, they are accepted. Most of them are just little line things. There's no, I didn't find
Pretty
anything substantial in any of it. It's just
Right.
clearing up the numbers.
Right.
So
Thank
do
you
we
to
have-
staff for your work on the comp plan.
There was a
It is a
lot.
huge document. We really appreciate it.
That was
There's a reason
big.
that we look at it a lot too, is because we need to keep having eyes on it. So we thank
Right.
you for those opportunities too, to not squish it all into one meeting.
And thank you for maneuvering through the public comments and the change of venues and the technical difficulties.
lot.
Appreciate your help.
Sending us all of our comments.
Did you all watch the,
It's frightening to look at it again.
I was really surprised because I thought when we went into recess, it would cut off, and it didn't. But is there any updates that you want to hand us?
I was going to say the next meeting, I think, is Tuesday, right?
Correct.
Tuesday with Human Service Commission, and it just was emailed out today. It's a real short document to read about the healthy community strategy, and the reason, if you didn't get it, the reason that you're all invited is, a part of it is Housing Strategy 9, that's about homeless and adults with special needs, finding housing for them. It was the whole strategy number 9 that sort of got everything thrown in at the end of our housing strategy work. All the really hard stuff went into 9, and that's what we're working with Human Services to address that, and so that's why we're having a joint meeting. So, and that's again in the Pickering room where we had so much fun on the 10th. Hopefully there won't be any issues, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun working with that commission again.
What's the date again?
Tuesday,
Tuesday the
29th.
I was going to say the 29th, but I didn't want to get it wrong.
Today's the 24th.
With 29th.
Yeah, Tuesday.
So we will all be there?
I'll be there.
I think Robin's not going to be there, but I can't remember.
And the agenda was set out today?
It was emailed this afternoon.
Okay.
It's pretty short. I'm sure a lot of it'll be described in the meeting, but the handout was pretty short.
Do we have updated census data for that? When we were making those, that year that we spent making those strategies, do we have updated census data since then?
I'm not the consultant working on it, so I'm
Okay.
not sure what she'll have, what they'll present to us. There might be something in the memo, but I haven't gotten through it all yet.
We'll find out on Tuesday.
Yes.
So with no other comments, no other updates, I'm going to close the meeting at 9:06.
Nice. Well done.